office coughs up blood every night. He was blown up multiple times in armored vehicles. And he literally, they keep sending him to other meetings. And then the illegals come across, God bless them. They get free health care, but our veterans have had it turned off. Why do you think the system's doing that?
Well, I think that it comes down to we've got corruption at the highest levels of all of our institutions. And that's I think, the main point to get across. If you look at most of our institutions in this country, you've got people at the front lines who are honest, have integrity, they're doing their job, they're trying to live the mission statement. The VA has some of the most salt-of-the-earth people working there, the ones who are actually providing the care. But when you look at these corrupt bureaucrats who are making money on the blood of veterans by earning bonuses, by trying to falsify records to show what great care they're giving everybody, somebody needs to send these people to prison, and it's just like blowing up the person's house. Next time, pay attention. It sends a message to everybody else in the neighborhood. Pay attention. If you punish somebody like a Lois Lerner or some of these folks, these bureaucrats and these other agencies that we know are corrupt, it would send a message to the rest of them. But that's the problem. And I think that until people in these organizations either band together or stand up and do like the Department of Homeland Security tells us all to do, you see something, say something. Of course, they don't want you to say something about the corruption you're finding in government, and they're more concerned about investigating those people who do speak out than what they're speaking out against. And
well, I tell you, Colonel, I agree, and the answer is all of us start speaking out. That's why you were saying before you went on air, look, I'm not a hero, don't talk about my Bronze Star, blah, blah, blah. But the point is, in a world of universal deceit, telling the truth is a revolutionary act. George Orwell, you are a hero, and everybody inside the system that speaks out, and I know you've had some repercussions for speaking out, you are a hero. Because studies show that political valor, going up against peer pressure in the establishment, is more rare than physical valor.
Well, thanks. I appreciate it. I think you're a hero. In fact, one of the things I hear a lot, people, when they see a veteran, they'll say, oh, thank you for your service. I want to thank you for your service.
Oh, well, thank you. And well, I'm just trying to have a free country for my kids.
Yeah, exactly. And that's what I want to do, is try and turn over something to my kids that was turned over to me from my father and mother's generation.
Absolutely. It's an imperative that instinctively we stand against this. I mean, is that how you feel? It's just like a burning desire?
Yeah, I feel like the thing that scares me about this country is the same thing that scares Mike Mullen, Admiral Mullen, who is a former chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff. This was the most senior man in uniform in our country who said the most significant threat to this country isn't terrorism, it's our debt.
Raising the debt ceiling, which has been done over 100 times, does not increase our debt. It does not somehow promote profligacy. All it does is it says, you got to pay the bills that you've already racked up, Congress.
When our country collapses, what do people think is going to happen economically? I thought it was interesting that during the last government shutdown that they had a quote-unquote glitch in the EBT card system, where in about a dozen states, and I'm sure you remember it,
caused havoc.
It caused havoc because people's EBT cards didn't work. And a lot of Walmarts across the country, had some serious problems. And I think that was to send a message to the people who did not want to sign that law to raise the debt ceiling. And it was, do you really want this to happen on your watch? Because this is what happens when people's EBT cards don't work for a few hours. What do you think is going to happen when Social Security recipients, people on disability, veterans, everybody who works for a government agency suddenly doesn't get their check? We're going to need those Bearcats. And that's really, I don't have a problem with having Bearcats, because if they're going to collapse the government and you're going to see riots in the streets if our economy collapses, then sure, people are going to be wishing they had more Bearcats. But
well, that's where I was going, and I want to hear
who's controlling those Bearcats. Who are the people at the top that are going to be giving those orders?
And we know it's going to be at the Tea Party, who knew about the problems and tried to stop it. It's going to be the Free Staters who knew about the problems and tried to stop it. And that's the issue, is that I've said, as things collapse, and if Austin's burning, where we're talking today, I would want the police to put down riots and protect my house. The issue is, though, The globalists lit the fuse of this. The Federal Reserve devalued the dollar. They moved the world away from the dollar. They did this, and they think they're going to bring in the crisis and get total social control out of it. They engineered it. So when it all collapses, which probably is inevitable now, probably too late to reverse it. Ron Paul said that on my show, and I agree with him. We tried years ago. The people that engineered this need to get the blame and go to prison so it doesn't happen again. Instead, we're going to end up with the engineers of this, who certainly exacerbated it, getting more power out of the crisis they created. You know, the old days, if you screwed up, you got fired or in trouble. Now they insulate themselves. So what I want to do, sir, because you're respectful and a nice guy, you keep throwing it back to me. I want to give you the floor now here for about 15, 20 minutes to get into all these incredible points that you bring up about the average Marine corporal. How much power do you want the president to have, and the centralization of control? Government as a racket, Smedley Butler, Noam Chomsky. I want to give you the floor here to address the viewers out there, Colonel, and really talk to folks, because I think in the final equation, what you're getting at here is, this is all a discussion we got to have with ourselves, our families, everybody else. This is a societal evolution. We're going into the bottom of a decadence cycle. And if good men and women don't get on deck to try to really have a soft landing, who knows where the world is going. So I want to give you the floor here to basically do 10, 15 minute, 20-minute speech, whatever you want, to the viewers out there and the listeners out there.
Going back to the integrity issue, here's another mission statement from our IRS. Provide America's taxpayers top quality service by helping them understand and meet their tax responsibilities, and enforce the law with integrity and fairness to all. So when it comes to what does integrity look like, if you look at our leadership, it's really shameful. Our people deserve better than that. Our veterans deserve better than that. Our citizens deserve better than that. We've had wars on poverty, drugs, the war on terrorism, and we're losing all of them. But we never see a war on corruption, a war on abuse of power, and a war on ignorance. Not illiteracy, but ignorance about what really goes on in this country. And I think, Alex, you do a great job of really, you've hit it right on the head, InfoWars. It's all about controlling information. And, people just don't get the facts. They don't get the information. They don't really know what's going on out there. And so I think that a war on ignorance is about teaching people, how vulnerable they really are toward mind control, manipulation, and so on. I read years ago that there was actually a psychology professor, of all people, whose class decided to do an experiment on him. And when he moved to the left side of the classroom, they all perked up and looked interested. When he moved to the right side of the classroom, they all looked bored and nodding off. And by the end of a few classes, he was teaching the entire class leaning against the left side of the wall on the left side of the classroom. And when this is the interesting part, though, when the students told him that they had manipulated him and that they put him there, he outright refused to believe it. He said that, no, I just like it over here better. And I think that's what's going on in this country. And the real, the cure for, or the way to inoculate people against manipulation, against mind control, against influence, is to simply educate them about the process of how it's done. And the real key is to get people to be willing to listen to other sides of an issue and stop being convinced that there are only two sides. The government obviously keeps everybody fighting against each other over distraction issues like abortion, gay rights, you name it. If everybody could just take a break for one election cycle, all these one-issue voters out there, and just make the one issue corruption. And regardless of where your politicians stand on your particular issue, if you can't trust them, then why are they your poster child? Why would you want to send somebody to Washington who is lied to your face? If you were an employer and an employee lied to you, stole from you, how long would they last? If you had a neighborhood watch, would you give all the weapons to the one person in the neighborhood who lies to everybody, who you can't trust, who's actually stolen from people? And so that's one of the things that concerns me, and I think it's really that war on ignorance and really reminding people or educating people as to just how much corruption has gone on in this country. one of the solutions, I think, to fight this war on corruption, and I see all the time out there on the internet, there's a lot of people out there who talk about taking up arms against the government and, starting a new revolution. Well, I don't think we're ready for that yet. I don't think that that's the way to do it. I think that the war really needs to be about corruption. And the way I would fight a war nowadays, if I were to go try and take over a country, I wouldn't send battalions of troops over. I'd send battalions of students, journalists, business people, politicians, teachers, and so on. And I would have them go into all those organizations within that country. And it really comes down to a battle of ideas over the water cooler. Have discussions. Let the best ideas rise to the top. And really, it's about educating people. It's about doing the right thing. And I think that if people really want to fight for this country, if you work for a government agency, you need to step up. And you need to look around, read your mission statement. If you're acting in conflict to that, then do something about it. If you're told not to, then go to your supervisor, go to your supervisor's supervisor. Until the time comes when enough people band together to turn some of these agencies around and we start demanding that people be held accountable. One of the things that bothers me about abuse of power is it causes so much damage. When you kill or abuse one innocent person, it creates 10 new enemies. And I think that's what we do with this global war on terrorism. I think that's what we do with a lot of our police departments out there. You always have that 10% in any organization that we talk about as, the ones that are the problem children. But the reality is, a lot of times it's more than 10%. And in our government agencies, that other 90% needs to, clean up their house. And unfortunately, a lot of times I think that 10% is at the top, so it's going to be hard. Another thing that I think might be a small first step is, wouldn't it be nice if somebody would sponsor a bill and we passed a law to add the oath to tell the truth to the oath of office? And what that would mean is, basically, anytime a politician or a government bureaucrat who takes an oath of office is speaking publicly or representing their office, whether it's to the people or the media, that they're under oath and that they're subject to the laws of perjury, subject to the penalty of perjury. And why don't we have mandatory sentences? And so I think if we could just clean up our politicians and bureaucrats, it's a small step because I'm sure they'd work around lying to us. Maybe they'd just shut up, which wouldn't be a bad thing either. I'd rather have them not say anything than to just lie to us. But eventually, organizations, whether it's a military organization or unit, a company, a corporation, a bureaucracy, or a country, eventually organizations take on the qualities and characteristics of their leaders. There's an old saying that an army of deer led by a lion is more to be feared than an army of lions led by a deer. And if you look at the people who are leading us, where are they taking us? When you look at some of the qualities of our leaders, we need to take a closer look of who's representing you. These are the people who represent us around the world. We had an ambassador to Belgium who was an accused pedophile. And there was an internal memo that was found or became public a while back that said that Howard Gutman would frequently try to ditch his security detail and solicit sex from prostitutes and minor children. And yet the investigation into that was quashed by high-level members in the State Department. Secretary of State Clinton at the time said that the first she heard about it was in the media. Now, my question is, okay, well, once you did finally hear about it, what did you do about it? Doesn't it concern anybody that the one person who's representing the entire United States to the people of Belgium could be molesting their kids? Mr. President, you're telling me that that's the best person you could find to be an ambassador for us, to represent us? Jeffrey Toobin said that Gutman was a Washington super lawyer who bought his ambassadorship through massive contributions to the Obama campaign. And Mr. President, you couldn't find a Secretary of State out of all the qualified people in this country who wouldn't have to read it in the newspaper that one of our ambassadors could be a child molester? Another thing that I'm curious about is, these ambassadors that are political appointees. It's interesting that they never seem to end up in places like Benghazi or things like that. And if they did, I wonder if we'd spend more money to protect them or maybe make more of an effort to protect them if they were in danger.
What difference at this point does it make?
It continues to come back to trust. And if you look at our politicians, you can go all the way back or as far back as you want to look at lies that have been told to the American public. And, Herbert Hoover